is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals because at the end of the day, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Tuesday, everybody. I got a very special guest for you guys here today. Like I say, I always like to talk to people who are in the trenches, right? And, you know, going out there and building a business, balancing out multiple different units, you know, like with assets, brokerage, warehousing, all of that stuff. It's a process. And, you know, and then especially in today's economic environment, freight market, and all of that stuff, there's a lot of real decisions that are made out there. And we're going to talk about how all of that's done today. So I want to welcome back my good friend, Sonne Kahlon with Wido Logistics. Sonny, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Hey, thank you, Chris. Always good to be with you here and have a good conversation.
No, man, I'm looking forward to it, man. It's been a while since we've seen each other. And, you know, I guess that just kind of comes with the territory of everybody being busy and, you know, building a real business and everything out there. So, man, what's been going on in your world?
Just staying busy, trying to do a lot of traveling. I just got back from India. I was with a delegation about a month and a half ago. So a lot of activity out there. I was down at the TPM about a couple of weeks ago. So a little jet lagged, but glad to be back home, you know, and get some rest.
Oh, man. So what's been going on in your world? So, you know, for those who aren't aware of what you do out there, Sonny, I mean, you're big in drayage, you got warehousing and, you know, primarily up in the Pacific Northwest up there. How has things been going on, you know, like with we'll start with tariffs, right? Because that's been one thing that has been kind of going back and forth. How have you balanced that out as somebody who's really on the front lines of all of that, being in drayage and warehousing, when you're working with your customers on, you know, like essentially what's going to happen next year?
Well, you know, it's such a big uncertainty right now. I mean, with tariffs, you know, so many importers were affected. We've seen people make big shifts just to save a penny here and a penny there. We used to have some customers that used to call the gateway of Seattle and Tacoma. Then they moved to Oakland or LA. And then some people from LA came up to the north. So there's so many shifts that's happening. And we also had to adjust to that too, because cost effectiveness is the name of the game. It's been for a while now. You know, in order to sustain your business and at the same time, you know, be able to serve your customer is a very fine balance. You know, we've had to, you know, stop working with certain customers and take on others, you know, not to, you know, burn any bridges, but, you know, it's just that time right now. You know, sometimes we can't afford to serve a certain customer because they're really worried about their bottom line, and then it affects our bottom line as well. So a lot of shifts did happen, no doubt about that.
How do you assess that? Because, you know, I think if there's anything I have been talking about more than anything lately, Sonny, is that not all business is good business. And I think like as a sales rep or as a business owner and you're going out there on your own, you try so hard just to get a yes. And then you find yourself doing things that you probably shouldn't be doing, you know, like you're making concessions on things. You're doing anything to keep the business because like, you know how hard it is to develop it. So how do you get to that point where you're looking at a customer, you know, there might be some volume that's attached there, but it's not worth your time. How do you get to that conclusion?
Well, you got to take a look at a lot of different aspects of a customer. You know, we're looking at cash flow. That's number one. You know, then we get some volume customers that'll come to us and say, hey, we want you to move the whole deal, this, that, and the other. But then you got to look at their pay terms. If their pay terms are 60 to 90 days out, and within the 60 to 90 days, you've already, you know, accrued $500,000 worth of business. That's $500,000 that you don't have, that you have to wait for. But you still have to pay your service providers, your employees, your facilities, your leases, insurance, everything. There's so many other things that go along with it. So I would say when we're looking at a customer, first of all, we look at, their credibility. Number two would be their pay terms, because it could be a great customer, but if they break you in cash flow, you could lose your ass on that.
Yeah.
And we had to, at times say, thank you, but no thank you. We just can't afford to have that much latency on pay terms because it's going to add up quickly.
Yeah, that's one of those things that I think everybody kind of comes to that conclusion at least I would think most logical individuals are going to come to that conclusion at some point, Sonny, where they're like, yeah, pay terms of 60 days, 90 days. I've seen them as high as like 120 to 180 days and stuff like that. And again, it's like, that's why you need to understand who you're going after. And you got to, ideal customer profile, that's a term that comes to mind here. There are certain manufacturers in this country that there's only a handful of providers that can afford to do business with them because they need 120-day terms. They need 7 figures of credit per month issued to them so they can operate their business and stuff like that. And that's why it's like, for me, when you're going after individuals, individual companies and stuff like that, you got to do this is the literal importance of doing the research on who you're calling, because you don't want to get to that finish line just to find out like, hey, yeah, you can move our freight, but our payment terms are 120 days. We need $1 million a month in credit. And then you need to be able to do 1,000 loads a month. And then you're like sitting there like, I don't have the infrastructure. I don't have the money. I can't even get funding to float that, So it's like, there's a lot of things, man, that you don't think about.
Yes, you got to be careful. You can't get ahead of yourself just because you want to move fast and you want to be the biggest, shark in the tank. But, at the same time, we've seen a lot of companies go under because, they were so driven. They wanted to take every customer on. I think, if we take it slowly, have a long-term vision, there's a better outcome in that than trying to be the biggest guy in town.
Do you think a lot of people get caught up in, because, it's like every day now, it's an over-exaggeration to say every day, but like there's always somebody raising capital. They're announcing, oh, we raised 50 million. We got this. Do you think that causes most entrepreneurs to think like, I got to go and raise capital. I got to give away equity in my business, as opposed to taking I want to bootstrap everything, right? Like my long-term goal, and I talk about this, is I want to build the largest transportation company in North American history, but I want to own myself. And that's not to say that I don't answer to my customers and my team and everything. I don't want to be beholden to a private equity firm. I don't want that aspect of things.
That is such a good point, actually. I'm glad you brought that up. I've personally saw CEOs that were the owners of their company. And thankfully, we've been organic ever since we started, and we still are. They, raised funds, and they were successful at, round 1, round 2, they got millions of dollars. But then I saw them a few years later, and they were not the same people. They were tired. They have to go out and hustle every day because now they have stakeholders. People are looking at the company closely. You got to be careful. If that's your cup of tea, then that's fine. But if you want control and you still want to have some peace in your life, then I would say that, stay away from a lot of stakeholders that'll drive you, into the ground spiritually. You might be out there, getting contacts and making business, but I've seen some tired CEOs out there, and I don't want to be one of them.
And that's what because we've been approached. I think everybody at some point gets approached about, taking on investment and everything. And again, like there's great companies that are out there that do it. I don't want to make it sound like every venture capital is, There's a lot of great companies that are out there, but I think like and I almost look at it like a lot of like what's going on in the market right now. Like this is a very tough conversation that I think a lot of people have to have, where it's like, hey, how do we slug this out and continue down the path that we're on, about staying independent, and that's what I want more than anything. I want that. I want to build the best company I possibly can, Sonny, and I want to retain that control aspect of it to where I don't have to be beholden. Like, again, if I'm going to take on financing, I'll go to a bank. I'll take out an SBA loan. I'll do it that way. I'll take on the risk. I've seen both sides of it. But I have yet to meet somebody who took on a lot of investment capital that will ever tell me privately that they don't regret that decision. Like, I have met so many founders, Sonny, who have taken on capital. And this isn't just a transportation thing. This is just like entrepreneurs that I know as a whole. They have all said in private, not, and again, I'm probably over exaggerating. They would have rather had it take longer to keep and retain control than take access to capital and then dilute their dreams.
I'm telling you, I've sat down with many of them, and some tell you, others don't. And I'm not saying this is all bad. There's been a lot of good situations, like you said. If you got a good venture capitalist that's invested in you, you got to make sure that they also have invested in a lot of other sectors and a lot of other companies. And the plus point of that is when they invest in you as a company, they can connect you with some of their other businesses that they have invested into. You get more out of it that way, but it's got to be the right venture capitalist company. It can't just be anybody with money. They have to have, diversified portfolio. Then I would probably, entertain that idea. But most people, they just go out there shopping for money. Then they get stuck with stakeholders that they wish they've never met. Yeah. So that's kind of what it is.
No, and I think that's, because it's tough, right? Like, I don't know if enough people can comprehend how much like effort it takes to get something off the ground when you have no money, no customers, no revenue. It's almost like it's diluted with social media world because everything just seems so easy online, right? You scroll through LinkedIn and everybody's a millionaire on LinkedIn. Everybody's killing it. They've never had a bad day in their life. They've made every right move possible. And you're sitting there and you're like, what the fuck am I doing wrong? But it's like, I just sit here and, as I go about it, and where I'm like, I made a post about this a couple weeks ago, and it's like, man, the hardest part I have encountered building a business is creating a system. And that's like a sales system that actually works, right? Because there's so much trial and error. There's so much pressure because it's like, you only have so much money to work with. So it's like, you got to get something figured out quick. And then it's like that systems development aspect of things, I would say, has probably been like the hardest or like the biggest hurdle that I've had to overcome, mainly because like I don't write shit down. I just act. But it's like, having that and then having a system that other people can follow. I think that's been kind of like the hardest thing out there for me.
And you're absolutely right. I think we need to stay away from social media altogether because there's nothing better than putting your head down and just working and achieving a goal. The crowd comes later, all these, conferences, and I'm not trying to down any conferences. They're all great. They're all great networking, opportunities. But, my personal experience, and I'm going to be pretty open with this, when I go to, all these different places, seems more like a job fair than a business owner opportunity. And I, after doing it multiple times, I try not to do it anymore. I try not to go to as many conferences anymore because the time that I spent here talking to my customers and doing the right thing for my business is more fruitful than going into a crowd. I mean, it's like a spring break for employees, to be honest with you. And I've kind of gotten tired of that. I think if you just sit down and focus on your business, find the clientele, and do what it takes to get this thing off the ground, will bring you more results and happiness in the long run.
How long did it take you to come to that conclusion?
To be honest with you, I felt this way for the longest, for the last even 2 to 3 years. But, it was a necessary evil. I wanted to just kind of go out there and just kind of feel it out, see what it's all about. And to be honest with you, I kind of, I've had my fill with that. Yeah. I like being home.
Yeah, no, man. I know what you're saying there, because it's like, it's expensive to go to some of these events, absolutely, right? And it's like flight, hotel, entry, all of that stuff, meals, and it's like it adds up quick. And it's like if I go to anything, it's like I have to like 10x my investment into that, right? And again, it's like I only have so much capital to play with, right? Like if I'm going to be doing anything, and that's why it's like, you know, I really made that decision over the last couple of years where it's like I got to rein in travel unless I'm going to visit a customer or a prospect.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, and then it's, you know,
Yes.
there's a couple of industry shows that I'm always going to be at. And a lot of it is because
Yes.
like all of the advertisers that I have on my show are there. That's it's more of a business thing for me. I want to show face with everybody and stuff like that. But that spring break kind of thing that you're talking about, I noticed that a few years ago as well. And I'm like, man, I got to go to these, like, I got to get an ROI here. I can't just go and pop, you know, like I only have so much money to operate with. Right. And it's like, again, it's that balancing act, man. Like you gotta, I personally think you're better off just keeping your head down and building your business for a lot longer than you might want before you kind of go out and do some of those things. Like if you're going to network or if you're going to go to a conference, whatever niche you're in, go to a conference in that.
And that's the key. You know, if you do targeted, you know, trips, targeted events, and you know what you want out of them, that's the best way to go about it. And my tip to anyone who's listening would be, if it's a 3-day event, stay there for a day and a half, leave. First day and a half is the only time that matters. After that, it's just a bunch of noise. It'll just get you tired. You'll come home jet lagged and hungover. Nothing else is going to come out.
No, I hear you there, man. So like with your guys's, you know, with your operations, you know, with warehousing and everything, how are you guys going out there and competing in this market? Because, you know, like obviously there's competition in everything. And, you know, especially up in the SeaTac region, there's got to be a ton of competition that is inside. So like, how are you standing out in the crowd right now?
Well, to be honest with you, there's so much competition now. It's you know, you have to do something different in order to be noticed. So what I'm personally doing is, besides the logistics aspect of it, I'm diversifying my own business portfolio. I'm going in a few different directions. Thus, I was out of the country about a month and a half ago. You know, logistically, I can't beat the guy sitting in his garage because our overhead is too large, too great. We're all offering the same deal. You know, trucking is trucking at the end of the day, whether it's an electric truck or a diesel truck, you know. Warehousing, you know, same deal. We have a lot of new entrants that came in and just really just destroyed the pricing of the whole market. So right now, currently speaking, there's not much you can do. But if you have the finance to hang on until things do get better, that's probably the mantra right now. Is just hang on while you're waiting, diversify your portfolio, see what else you can also do that you can potentially connect to logistics. But besides, far as services go, there's a lot of people out there that don't have much to lose, and they're really driving our value down as, you know, credible service providers.
What do you mean by that they don't have much to lose?
You know, there's not a barrier to entry to this business. It's a zero barrier to entry. You know, we get people, I mean, at one point, the price point that we were working in this region and some other regions, it was wonderful. It was beautiful. Then you got all these newbies that come in, you know, onesies or twosies or, you know, very small footprint warehouse. They just want the customer. They don't even think about the implications, the long-term implications of what they're doing, driving down cost, you know, and lots change. You know, it's because of tariffs. These importers or, you know, these shippers will, just to save $1, will switch on you. The loyalty is no longer there. And for businesses like us that have a bigger footprint and that have really proved ourselves, you know, in the years, we actually, you know, had to give up a lot. We lost business. It's hasn't been an easy ride, that's for sure.
What is one of those things now where, you know, when you're going out there, like obviously you guys have your own trucks, you guys can control, you know, pulling containers from the ports and everything like that. What, like, how are you leveraging that at, you know, compared to your competition who might just have that one facility that's out there, right? Like I would feel that your value proposition would be far greater than most when you can actually use your own fleet to go into the port, pull it, bring it to your actual warehouse, palletize, shrink wrap, get it ready for, the domestic, portion, the middle mile move and stuff like that. So it's like, are you seeing a lot of importers and forwarders right now who are just like, no, man, we got to get it for less. Like, we're getting killed on this end. If we can't, it's just completely gutting their profits.
And, we are, we handle every aspect of everything. We've done that for many customers before, from the port to their DC, from the port to even a consumer level. We would, ship out stuff. But the problem is right now, these freight forwarders or, shippers, they're piecemealing everything. Okay, find the cheapest trucking here, find the cheapest warehouse here. They really don't care for, in-house service that handles everything. They just want the cheapest price point there is right now. That's just the way it is.
How are you guys seeing import volumes currently? I think, for me, it's tough to ever get like an accurate number. Like, I can see all the public data that's out there. Everybody's got an opinion on like, oh, imports are this, imports are that. From your perspective, man, where are things right now compared to years past?
Well, things right now, especially with the tariff situation, you saw that surge of, front loading that happened even in LA. There was a lot of activity going on, but the uncertainty of, these importers don't know what's going to change in the next 5 months or 6 months. So they're trying to take advantage of small little pockets. So we're seeing surges and then we see just a big downfall. It's a big roller coaster ride right now for everybody. We could see, 2 months that are just crazy busy and then followed by 4 or 5 months of minimum activity. And that's kind of what's happening. People are kind of being picky and choosy when they're going to bring the product in and when they should put a halt on it.
Yeah. Do you think, because I think some people might not understand that ports compete with each other. And what you were saying earlier about how, there's now freight that comes through Seattle that was once going down through Oakland and vice versa. Are you seeing that as almost like a positive for the import game, because it's going to force the ports to actually compete as opposed to, like having all of those, I'm not saying that this is what goes on, but have all those backdoor deals where it's like, hey guys, we're going to have rates be at this and people can deal with it. Do you think that is going to drive innovation from that side of things?
Well, competition is healthy. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. But, I think when we're losing business to Canada, then it becomes a problem. We've lost a lot of business to, Vancouver. I don't know if you've heard in the past, they bought the Kansas City Rail. Now imports can come directly to Canada and they can make it to the Midwest cheaper, faster. And people recognize that. And when we lose, freight to another country where we're not licensed to do anything, then it becomes a problem. If LA becomes busy, we can operate in LA. Oakland, same deal. East Coast, we can handle it there as well. But we can't do much if it goes out of country. And I think we're losing a lot of volume to, our neighbors in the north. And they're great, but I just wish that more of it was coming to our gateway than losing it to them.
So how are they losing to Canada in a sense of like they're able to, I don't want to say circumvent the tariffs, because I know that they're going to have to pay tariffs at some point on the freight. Is it cheaper to ship it in through Vancouver and then put it via rail as the tariff less, bringing it in that way than it would be just coming straight to Seattle and putting it on the rail in Seattle and shipping it to Kansas City?
Unfortunately, yes.
Gotcha. Now that makes, and again, and it's like, that's why I'm, I've said this multiple times on this show, but I think tariffs are a good thing for the long term in of the country. I think the reindustrialization of the United States of America is a very great plan, and I'm not going to deviate away from that stance. It's just very messy in the short term as we're ironing out a lot of things. And because it's like, I look at it like this, man. At what point are we going to stop subsidizing the world? Like at what point, like we're broke as a country, you know what I mean? Like we got to take drastic measures, and that comes along with it. But it's like, I hate to even hear that, right? That it's like, oh no, they can just bring it in through Vancouver and then they can bring it via rail and then they can circumvent everything at that point. That costs American jobs. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like how much of a dip in volume in the Port of Seattle and in Oakland and everything, that costs American jobs. And that's an issue, right? And I think, like, you know, again, you can hate the messenger behind the tariffs and everything, but the message itself, I think, is very valid.
Right. And, you know, I think, you know, for the good of the country, whatever's necessary needs to happen. But what happens is, you know, it happens in such a short time, you know, aggressive, you know, policies. I think a long-term plan is probably a better bet. But then, you know, we see, you know, policy change every 4 years and everyone wants to have their own way. And when you're concentrating all these regulations into 2 to 3 years, there's never a good outcome on that. You know, I think if it was spread out, that whole plan, you know, whatever needs to happen, maybe a 5-year, 10-year plan or something, then there's always something good that comes out of it. But when we're trying to just implement our own theory in a short amount of time, it's always going to be devastating.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean, man. So how are you really approaching the, you know, 2026 with where things are currently? You know, again, I see the headlines just as much as everybody else does. And, you know, I'm always cautiously, like, I'm an optimistic realist. I like, that probably sounds like a double negative, but it's the truth, right? Like, I'm optimistic, but like, I'm also a realist in the sense of, you know, because I prospect business every single day. I make cold calls every single day. I send email, like, I do all of that. I haven't seen that floodgate of opportunities that you could make a correlation between some of the headlines you see out there. So what advice, I guess long-winded, what advice would you give people right now from your seat on, like, hey guys, this is what I would do and this is what we're doing to focus on the long-term growth and avoid that short-term setback?
I would say save your capital. Hold on. You know, if you can hold on right now, don't invest big. Ride out 2026. Just see what's happening. You know, especially with the war going on and the tariff situations that are uncertain. We have a 150-day, lead time on that. But in August, let's see what becomes of the 15% tariffs. I know they're trying to make it a permanency, but just kind of hold on. Right now is just the time to just see where we're headed. And in 2027, if things open up, then there's going to be opportunity. And I think the opportunity comes to the people who save their finances right now, who are willing to then, invest big when the opportunity does come.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm really right there with you, man. I'm more of, we got to stash as much cash as possible, because I think that I think 2027 that's just kind of where my gut is on where there's going to be like massive opportunities. And that's why it's like, dude, we're just sitting here trying to build our war chest, because it's like, whether it's the form of an acquisition, you know, like I'm convinced that, because, you know, like, our long-term thing is, man, like, we want trucks, we want to have our own flatbeds and Conestogas and everything. Right. I think that opportunity is going to come about in 2027, and I want to strike with that, you know. And it's like, we just have to be ready for that, and cash is everything, you know.
Especially, you know, I mean, if you're going to, you know, obviously, if you're trying to grow your fleet, financing is also going to be an important aspect of that. And, banks, they like to look at how much liquid cash you got before they even talk to you. So in your case, I think, you know, that makes absolute sense. Save that dollar, wait it out. And 2027, when that opportunity does come around, then, you know, put your chips in, go big. Yeah. And that's where your opportunity lies.
No, I love it, man. Aggressive patience. That's a term that comes to my mind there. But Sonne, I appreciate your time, man. If you guys are hiring, or how does anybody reach out to you? How can they find out more?
info@widologistics.com. That email comes to everybody, also comes to me as well. Any questions, you can find me on LinkedIn, Sonne Kahlon. Message me. There's plenty of ways to find me, I guess.
Perfect. No, that sounds great. And if you guys can't find Sonne or his team, hit me up. I will gladly put you guys in contact with them. But that is going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. As always, if you got value in what you heard and you're not subscribed, subscribe to the show, you guys. And if you're feeling ambitious, rank that show on iTunes and Spotify, because if you see value, your network's going to see it as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Came back with a bang, window down, yelling out money, anything. Hey, ooh, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when I'm getting to the bag. Hey, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when the lane moves.